Good morning, Shelter. It is 6 a.m., so you know what that means, our daily 6 at 6. Now, we've been covering Miss Gren and our series of Is It Living for the past few weeks now, and we are so close to the very end of this series, and hopefully going to start a new one for you guys. But we got 2 weeks left, and this week we're going to be talking about excretion. Now, this is one of those that when I was teaching it in the 7th grade, it is one topic that you cannot get away from, especially when you're telling 7th graders about excretion. Of course, all the laughs and the little giddies come into the things, but there's actually a lot of real truth that comes from the removal of waste from a living organism. And so we're going to tackle this week what it means to actually have that removal process take place by looking at ourselves as human beings internally as well as our spiritual walks. Now, when we talk about excretion in a living organism, and we're going to use human beings as our example, there's actually 3 forms that it actually comes into of removal. And that first one is gas. And the second one is liquid. And then our third one, which is the favorite for all the 7th graders, which is the solid. So I won't go into too much detail because I'm pretty sure you figured it out. But each one of these has a very unique purpose as to why the body has to remove something. And it goes back to this thing in our body systems, which is called homeostasis. Now, for those of you, it's been a while since you've taken a science class. Homeostasis pretty much is balance. Our bodies can't go too far in one direction or extremes. Like we can't be too hot or we can't be too cold. So we're constantly trying to do things that bring us back to normal. And so it's like when we get too cold, we shiver. That shivering basically causes vibrations and friction and heat, which then brings our body temperature back up. And then one of the portions of excretion actually is sweating, which is a form of liquid. When our bodies get too hot, we sweat. And the excretion of sweat actually cools down our bodies. Doesn't always smell great, but it does keep us cool. And so how do we take all of these things about what our body's doing and implement this into our lives? Well, I think first and foremost is this idea of balance. And that's the first one I really want to talk to you guys about, is because I think so much of our lives we've been taught, we've been told about how much we need to do, what we need to do, how it goes. But there's so much balance that comes into it, because we can have so much of something, but it not necessarily be a really good thing. See, there's a story one time where Pastor Jay and we went hiking, and he kept thinking to himself, water, I need more water, I need more water. So while we're hiking in the Grand Canyon, Pastor Jay drank so much water. What ended up happening is his body started to stop absorbing the water that he was drinking. And eventually he had this thing called hypernatremia, which is where the cells in his body couldn't get rid of the waste in his body. And no matter what, his body was just swelling up with water. And he could have actually died. He doesn't like me telling this story, but he's not here right now. And he almost got sick. He threw up, which was the only way for his body to get rid of the liquid, because his body wasn't getting rid of it naturally through the normal process in which our body gets rid of liquid waste. It had literally clogged it because he drank so much, because of what he was lacking was salt. He drank so much water, but took in so little salt that his body's balance was out of order. And so when we look at our own spiritual walks, I want you to take a look into your own balance. There's a lot of times where we need to have communion. We need to have conversations with our communities, and we need to have alone time. We need to have times where we're engaging with the Word of God, where we're analyzing it. But we also need to take that study of the Word of God and we need to bring it to others. Because if we get too much out of balance, where we're just feeding one thing over and over and over again, we're going to have a byproduct of waste that can really end up harming our own spiritual walk. When we live in balance, our homeostasis, we add things into us, and eventually that natural love, joy, peace of goodness that we're adding into our lives ends up turning out the byproducts that we really want to get rid of, which is our sin, which is the anger, which is the pain. And as we have this unique balance that's kind of taking place in our lives, we're able to move forward. And we're going to talk a lot about all these different things that can add balance into our lives by removing different aspects to it. But with each step, I want you to be very cognizant and thinking and praying about, what is the balance? What are the things where I need to be actively looking for what's positive to remove what's negative? So excited for these last 2 weeks, guys. You have no idea, because this one is one of those things where I've taken wholeheartedly over the last 6 months of my life, where I'm just looking and asking God, like, hey, what are the small pieces that I can remove? But I also have to realize I have to input something else into it. So as we add something into us that is good, God's going to be looking for something to remove from us that is bad. And it's this beautiful balance within our own spirituality that is a natural part of our own bodies. Guys, I love you, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of this Monday.